here's Brody Brazil.
I totally realize this breakdown of the NBA Finals is a much different perspective than you're going to get from anybody else here on YouTube. I know I'm off in the weeds in some of these thoughts, but I also think you're going to find what I have to say a little bit interesting. First things first, as for Oklahoma City, congratulations to their team, their players, their fan base. It's the first ever NBA title for the Thunder. They've gotten to that final round before in 2012, couldn't win it, but here in 2025, they did take the Larry O'Brien trophy. And as you see it here passed around right after the game between players, and there are some smiles on faces, and this is the immediate reaction, but did you find it a little odd that the celebration inside their locker room was quite subdued? Did you watch the Florida Panthers win their second Stanley Cup in as many years last week? And how crazy and rambunctious their players were. Like in the immediate seconds and in the moments of getting the Stanley Cup and in the celebration, like literally all night that evening following the victory, the Thunder weren't like that at all. It was oddly subdued. If I'm going to use certain words here, oddly subdued. This is a young group. They've never done this before. They might do it more times, but they kind of acted like they've been here before, like 50 times prior. Not the case. I found that just interesting. I also want to go back in the history books here, and I'm not a big fan of crossing over real life and the life and death of major things like natural disasters with sports topics. I feel always odd diving into this category, but I do want to point this out. I wish Hurricane Katrina did not happen for a lot of reasons. Let's state the obvious there. But it's also interesting that because it happened, and because the New Orleans Hornets played those 2 temporary seasons in Oklahoma City, and it was the audition. It was the chance for that city to show it was NBA ready. It could host a major pro sports franchise in OKC in the state of Oklahoma. Whoever thought that was necessarily a thing before, but because of the example that was set there, it opened up the door for the Seattle Supersonics to be sold, to be relocated. I know that's the main point of this video, but just think if Hurricane Katrina didn't happen. Again, I wish for a lot of reasons that didn't happen, but it wouldn't have opened the door that made the Thunder possible, that made winning a championship like this possible. It's just kind of crazy, the sequence of events that have led us here. But going back to this NBA Finals, look, exciting to see a Game 7. I mean, as much as I always hate the fact that you play a series that comes down to a one game to decide the series, like, that's just the way it is. There's no other way to do it. And whether it's a Stanley Cup final in a Game 7, a World Series in a Game 7, or here in the NBA Finals, Game 7s are great. There's nothing like it, unless you're a fan of one of the teams, like a hardcore fan, then you're biting your nails all day long. As for the entire NBA Finals, I wish the playoffs. I wish all of the playoffs weren't so injury impacted. Haliburton out, Tatum out, Leonard out, Lillard out, Embiid out, Williamson out at various different points, whether it was play-in games or first-round games or conference final games. You had a lot of teams with a lot of star players impacted because they had injuries they could not come back from, or they tried to play through and it just was not the same. So it was a different year of the NBA playoffs because of so many key injuries. Now, how do I feel for the Pacers, the Thunder, in the respective loss and win of this NBA Finals? I don't have a horse in this race. I've never really taken a side in these NBA Finals, but let me say this. For the Pacers, what else are you supposed to say? You get to the final game. An entire season relies on winning and losing one game, and they lost it. And look, the Pacers have been a perennial playoff team for a lot of years. I think there was a gap 2021, 2020, 21, 22, but they're back. And before that, they were in the playoffs for a lot of years, and they're going and growing. So not much you can really say about the Pacers. Again, I wasn't rooting for or against them. I also wasn't rooting for or against the Thunder, but I think my whole point of this video goes like this. Between the Pacers and Thunder, in terms of feeling good or feeling bad for one side or the other, my actual real thought of all of this is feeling really bad for basketball fans in the city of Seattle. Supersonics fans had to watch this, had to endure this, probably felt a lot of different emotions during the finals and watching the ascent of the Thunder, the team that used to be theirs up in Seattle, the one that relocated to Oklahoma City. Again, in terms of caring about the Pacers or Thunder, I didn't really have any true emotions there, but I really do feel bad for Seattle NBA fans. And let me just give you the Seattle perspective. It has been 17 years since the team was bought and relocated. And with the exception of, by the way, it's still the same general manager of the Thunder that ended this time as the Seattle Supersonics. So there's not much carryover, though. It's not the same players. It's not the same coach. It's not the same team personnel for the very most part, if anybody else besides the GM. So it's a totally different iteration of the team. I feel like in Seattle, it's less about, well, those are our guys. It's more about, we don't have something that you have and that we should still have. Seattle still wears this chip on their shoulder, and I don't know if it's proudly, but it's definitely apparent, at least in my perspective, and I totally understand and relate to it. Seattle actually had, at some sports bars up there, hate watch parties during the NBA Finals, where you could go specifically and root for the Pacers and root against the Thunder. And I realize a lot of people are saying, well, that seems kind of petty. Unless you've been through this situation, you can't really understand all of the emotions behind it. And I think among the frustrating factors is this. The former Key Arena, which was kind of a big deal and a problem in this whole situation, that the Sonics wanted a new building, couldn't get it, back and forth with politics and lack of public subsidies, and Key Arena was the big problem here. Well, since then, since the departure in 17 years since the Sonics have left, Key Arena has not only been completely gutted and completely renovated, but the NHL's Seattle Kraken have already played there now for several seasons at Climate Pledge Arena. It's a beautiful building. Seattle Center, shadow of the Space Needle. It remains like the perfect venue for Seattle indoor, like NBA or NHL sports. And it even has, like to this day, they put in an NBA locker room with the thought that someday a basketball team, an NBA team, would also call that building home. So the biggest problem of the team's departure and their non-existence has since been solved. And at that same point, NBA expansion, like right now, it feels imminent. You and I can probably see that the NBA, for a lot of reasons, which I'll get into in a second, the NBA is probably ready to expand, but for whatever reason, it's just not here yet. And I'll get into Adam Silver's update on that. He did have some things to say during these finals about Seattle. But first, let's go back to former NBA commissioner, the late David Stern, what he said in 2011 to ESPN. He flat out admitted, and this was only a couple years after the departure of the Sonics, I have regrets about Vancouver and Seattle. By the way, the Vancouver Grizzlies going to Memphis, we could make a separate video on that some other time. But just talking about the Sonics, similar but different, but mostly similar situation. Seattle is the one that got away. My regrets are that somehow we weren't able to do a better job of getting a building moved around so that we could have kept a team there. David Stern flat out admitting mistakes were made in Seattle. Well, guess what? If you're a Sonics fan, that doesn't make you feel any better. You feel justified, but it doesn't fix the problem. So is the NBA getting to fix the problem? Adam Silver said this at the start of the NBA Finals when he did a press conference, quote, "It will be Seattle expansion. It will be on the agenda to take the temperature of the room in terms of the NBA's Board of Governors. We have committees that are already talking about it. But my sense is, at that meeting, which I think takes place in Las Vegas in July, if I'm correct, at that meeting, they're going to give direction to me and my colleagues at the league office that we should continue to explore." What he's saying there in a nice way is that I think we're talking about this and this is going to come up. But if I'm being honest about it, what he's saying, reading between those lines there, it's just not going to be a thing yet. They're not ready for this yet. We take it back a couple months ago in March of 2025. Silver said more on specifically expansion to Seattle, quote, "I would just say again to our many fans in Seattle, and I hear from them often, and the legacy of the Sonics is still very strong, and it's a fantastic basketball market, is that we are very focused on it. The fact that I'm not being more forthcoming publicly doesn't mean we're not studying it very intensely. We don't take those fans for granted. We're thankful that the interest has remained over all these years, and I would just say the fact that we're not ready to make any public announcements with a specific timeline doesn't mean we don't care a lot about those fans, and we aren't very focused on the potential for the NBA to return to Seattle," end quote. And again, if you're in Seattle, you've done all the hard work. Well, fans haven't necessarily, but all these things have happened. You've got a turnkey arena. You've proven that you've got a sustainable fan base. The fact that you can still walk around Seattle to this day and see a Sean Kemp, a Gary Payton jersey, Seattle Supersonics merchandise, almost as if the team was still playing there. It's been 17 years, and people are still wearing that merchandise. I do appreciate the fact that when the team moved, the Supersonics in Oklahoma City wouldn't have made sense, but they were able to keep the name in Seattle, ready for a return so that the fans in Seattle could continue to rally around the Sonics, knowing that that's their flag that they wave proudly still. Seattle has tons of corporate sponsors. And I mean, look, you're talking about a city that's already got the NHL, Major League Baseball, the NFL, MLS. This is a sports town. It's very supportive and sustainable to have the NBA in Seattle. And I do believe there are multiple ownership groups. It's not a question of, well, which one is going to even be capable of this. It's more like which one is actually going to get the chance to bid on an expansion fee, which, by the way, you would also think if you're the NBA, right now is the time to strike on expansion. For a lot of reasons, let's get into that next, but right now you're likely going to have, with the sale of the Celtics, where they had $6 billion, and the sale of the Lakers at $10 billion, it wouldn't be crazy that you could ask for an expansion fee anywhere between $5 and $10 billion at this moment. Oh, and you get to times it by 2 because you're probably going to welcome in Las Vegas and Seattle at the very same time. Here are my takeaways, and the NBA is pretty stable right now. They just locked down an 11-year media rights deal, which starts next season, and it's worth $76 billion. So you're not going to have a lot of transaction and transition with television and media partners. You're good. You're solid on that front. You also have a collective bargaining agreement that runs through the 2029-30 season. You're good on that front. The most recent one was taken care of in 2023. You already know pretty much, like the writing is on the wall, Las Vegas and Seattle are the next 2 cities for the NBA. I don't think there's a lot of dissension on that. I think most people agree. And it's also following in the NHL's footsteps. And you also have at this very moment, like if they announced it today, end of June 2025, they could start playing. They can't because they don't have teams and franchises and drafts, all that stuff. But they could literally start playing next season in Seattle. The arena's ready. They could play at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. That arena is ultimately ready too. You'd have to strike some deals with those buildings and figure it out. But turnkey NBA facilities already exist. This is not a worry about can you figure out a place to play? Where would you do this? How would you do this? So many questions are answered in both those places. I wished that the NBA, in seeing that the Thunder were in the finals and knowing that the NBA was closer or thinking that they were closer than this. I mean, Adam Silver flat out said that it's a conversation and it is being studied, but they're not ready yet. Wouldn't it have been cool in the days or weeks following what the Thunder just did if the NBA could turn around and say, you know what, Seattle, thanks for sticking with this. Thanks for sticking with us. We are ready to bring the league back to your city. Look, I know it's kind of a weird take to feel this way about a third city that wasn't even involved in the NBA Finals, but it's kind of my number one thought right now. Everybody was focused on, all right, 2 different opponents, 2 smaller market teams in these NBA Finals. And I agree, that's also cool. Sometimes you need a change of pace and scenery, but in terms of the Seattle effect, that's kind of the underlying headline of all of this that not a lot of people are talking about. I just hope the NBA, who has admitted they've done wrong here, can actually make it right sooner than later. Like, it's the right thing to do. Maybe make it happen right now. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments section below. Also, thumbs up while you're down there. Appreciate that. Helps me, the video, and the channel. And don't forget to subscribe down there. Hit that button right now. I would love to see you back here next time.